Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So, Marit Lage is an iconic creature, character, whatever it is. Lord people in the comments below talk about what Marit Lage is exactly. But yeah, Marit Lage is a very interesting, let's just say, thing in Magic, and something that, well, I have thought about building around for quite some time. And now after Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, I think we've got the perfect opportunity to build the Marit Lage deck that I have always been dreaming of. And of course, the builds that I dream of are always budget builds, though there is one exception in this deck, or okay, I should say two. Normally the Commander is an exception that I say, every card outside the Commander is less than $1. There is one other exception for this deck because, well, there has to be. That being said, again, every single other card outside of those two is less than $1, so it's still a budget-friendly deck. And now with all that said, let's jump into it. So this deck became possible because of one of the brand new commanders from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, which is Kura the Boundless Sky. Kura is a 4/4 dragon spirit with flying and death touch that costs 3 green. It has, when it dies, choose one. Search your library for up to 3 land cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle, or create an XX green spirit creature token where X the number of lands you control. Now, in various episodes, I talked about essentially all the dragons from the Kamigawa set. And yeah, Kura is one that, well, when it comes to power level scale, out of all the dragons, it's probably toward the bottom out of those, similar dragons in that cycle. I mean, for example, the blue one is pretty much just broken as a commander. But yeah, Kura might not be broken, but it can do some really interesting things and lead to some really interesting builds like this one. Now, obviously, the thing that I should mention with this commander is that the trigger that we do care about is not, that second option giving us an XX green spirit creature token. It is that first option which you're going to choose, which says get 3 lands from your library and put them into your hand. Obviously, the important part about this is it does not specify basic lands. So we can go get any lands that we want, any 3 lands, and of course there are some fantastic lands that, well, work very well together in what this entire deck is built around. So essentially the purpose of this commander for the deck and our goal with it is to say, hey Kura, okay, go into play, and then I'm gonna need you to actually, let's just say I'm gonna get rid of you to get that trigger, and then yeah, you've done your job. You got me the lands. Thanks a lot, Kura. You did your job, and now, well, let's highlight those lands that Kura is going to go get us. And I tend to not do this very often, but for this deck, we actually have 2 golden pigs in the deck. That's right, the 2 top cards out of our 99, because, well, the entire deck is built around each of them. And those cards are, of course, Dark Depths and Thespian Stage. That's right, these 2 lands are 2 of the 3 lands that we're essentially going to tutor with our commander basically every single time. Unless we already have one of them in our hand, or whatnot. Anyways, and actually I should mention that Dark Depths, yes, is the card that is, well, around, I think, $16 or so. So yeah, that one is an expensive card, but very needed for this deck. Regardless, it's a legendary snow land that enters the battlefield with 10 ice counters on it. By paying 3, you remove an ice counter from it, and when it has no ice counters on it, you sacrifice it. If you do, create Marit Lage, a legendary 2020 black avatar creature token with flying and indestructible. So normally, with this land that does not tap for mana, you would have to pay, 30 mana into it to take off all 10 of those ice counters to then sacrifice it to get that 2020 Marit Lage, flying indestructible, might I add. But of course, we are not going to be paying for that. We are instead going to be utilizing Thespian Stage to get around having to pay for that. It is a land that taps for a colorless, and it has pay 2 tap. Thespian Stage becomes a copy of target land, except it has this ability. So again, Dark Depths has that ETB that gets the 10 ice counters, and we cannot avoid that. It's going to get those ice counters on it, which is unfortunate. But again, Thespian Stage, which we can also get with our commander, we just get into play, and then we say, yeah, I'll pay 2, I'll tap this, and now it's a copy of Dark Depths. But unlike our other Dark Depths, which is in play, the Thespian Stage Dark Depths doesn't have any ice counters on it. Now, notably, and please correct me below in the comments if I'm wrong on this, obviously, it's also a legendary land as well, and both are Dark Depths, so yeah, we've got to sacrifice. I believe the original Dark Depths has to be sacrificed, so we still get that trigger. Again, correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong. Regardless, that really doesn't matter. Sacrificing that original Dark Depths won't get us Marit Lage, but that's okay because our Thespian Stage Dark Depths will. Again, because that Thespian Stage Dark Depths has no ice counters on it, we sacrifice it, and then we get Marit Lage, that legendary 2020 black avatar creature token with flying and indestructible. So yeah, this 2-land combo can be very spicy and very effective. Because who doesn't want that adorable Marit Lage token in play? I mean, just look at it. A 2020 flying and indestructible token legendary creature avatar, and yeah, this thing is huge and fun. Well, for you. Now, does that just win you the game? No. Obviously, your opponents can still deal with this, but yeah, it can be quite hard to deal with, being an indestructible flying 2020. And if your opponents don't deal with it quickly, well, this can very easily take them out in, 1 or 2 shots. On top of that, we've got some ways to make things pretty resilient as well. So now that we've talked about the plan for this deck, let's talk about the ways to really make it work. First up, our commander actually isn't the only one that can tutor lands for us, because we also are going to be running cards like Sylvan Scrying, Our Promise, and Ilea's Intervention. Sylvan Scrying is a sorcery for 1 and a green, and it's going to let us search our library for 1 land, put in our hand, then shuffle our library. So actually, if we already have, say, Dark Depths or Thespian Stage in our hand, we can just utilize this to tutor for the other one, and we can set our combo up even without our commander. Speaking of which, Our Promise says, search your library for up to 2 land cards, put them onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. So this one for 5 mana ramps us and just straight up gets our 2 lands that we need to combo with. Though do keep in mind it does put them into play tapped. And then finally, Ilea's Intervention is a sorcery that can help us out in multiple situations. It costs X green, and it says choose 1. Search your library for up to X land cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle your library, or Ilea's Intervention deals twice X damage to each creature with flying. So again, if we put 2 mana into that X, this is basically a 4 mana go tutor out 2 lands, so yeah, Dark Depths, Thespian Stage, sign me up. Or actually, if we already have our commander in play, this can also help us out in another way. Because by paying 2 mana into that X again, it's going to deal 4 damage to every single creature with flying, which again includes our commander, which obviously is a 4/4 flyer. So this can help us take our own commander out to get that death trigger, while of course also taking out our opponent's flyers as well. So yeah, this can be a flexible card that can help us out in various situations. Speaking of which, we've got a lot of other sneaky flexible cards in this deck with cards like Tangle Trap, Crushing Vines, and Crushing Canopy. Tangle Trap says choose 1, it's going to deal 5 damage to our creature with flying or destroy target artifact. Again, our commander only has 4 toughness, so for 2 mana instant speed, we can take it out to get that death trigger, or if an opponent has an annoying artifact in play, we can take that out instead. Speaking of which, Crushing Vine says choose 1, destroy target creature with flying or destroy target artifact. So again, take out an artifact or our commander or any other creature with flying. And then Crushing Canopy is the exact same card essentially as Crushing Vines, but for enchantments instead of artifacts. So again, these cards can either be fantastic ways to get our commander's trigger or to take something out that we need to. Speaking of which, there's Broken Wings, which is very flexible. It says destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. So basically just an upgraded version of those previous 2 cards. Or how about Tornado, which can actually only destroy a creature with flying, but if we don't need it, we can actually cycle it away for 1 and a green. Next up, of course, there's Beast Within, which is a fantastic option. It says destroy target permanent, its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. So this can take out anything and replace it with a 3/3 beast, and again, we take out our commander, well, we get a death trigger and a beast. But we can also utilize some cards in another very spicy way to really help us out with cards like Prey Upon, Savage Swipe, and Blizzard Brawl. Prey Upon says target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So for 1 mana, again, keep in mind our commander does have Death Touch, we can take out any creature on the board. Okay, any creature our opponents control, and any of them that aren't indestructible. You know what I mean. But of course, on top of that, if we play this correctly and we choose, say, a creature that has 4 or more power, well, we can also take out our own commander. So 1 mana, take out a creature, take out our own commander to get its death trigger. Yeah, that's a fantastic effect. Let's have more of them like Savage Swipe and Blizzard Brawl. Each of these essentially does the exact same thing. Savage Swipe says, target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn if its power is 2. Keep in mind our commander's power is not 2, then it fights target creature you don't control. I mean, we don't want to actually pump our commander anyways because we want to make Kura pretty easy to take out, so yeah, not pumping it and just having it fight, basically the exact same thing as Prey Upon. And then Blizzard Brawl is a snow sorcerer that says, choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. If you control 3 or more snow permanents, that creature gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible end of turn, then those creatures fight each other. Yeah, we're not going to control 3 snow permanents, so basically, again, just Prey Upon. But again, each of these are fantastic in this deck because they do exactly what we want them to do. 1 mana, take a creature out, and take out our commander. Speaking of which, there's Primal Might, which says, target creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn, then it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So obviously, again, if we don't put anything into that X, we don't pump our creature, so again, for our commander, that's very useful, and then we just still fight a creature. But keep in mind, again, if we want to do this with Marit Lage, well, we can pump Marit Lage a ton and have it fight something to take something out, and also, you know, be able to swing through. And actually, that's probably something I should have mentioned with all these fight spells as well, that, yeah, Marit Lage itself can be a great target for these fight spells once we get it out, because it's going to be able to take out pretty much anything on the board. Speaking of which, Inscription of Abundance is an incredible card in this deck. It's an instant for 1 and a green, and it says, choose 1. If this spell was kicked, choose any number instead. Put 2/+1 counters on target creature. Target player gains X life for X the greatest power among creatures they control, and target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So obviously, again, if we just have our commander out and we need to get our combo pieces, well, just use that last option and don't kick this. But if we already have gotten our land combo off and Marit Lage is in play, have fun. For just 5 mana at instant speed, we get 3 things. We get 2 counters on Marit Lage, which, you know what, 22/22 versus a 20/20, great, that's fine. On top of that, we can gain 22 life then, because that's going to be the greatest power among creatures we control, with Marit Lage being a 22/22. And of course, we can also have Marit Lage fight any creature we don't control to take it out. So yeah, this card is incredibly flexible and can help us out in a lot of scenarios. And speaking of flexible, there's Colony Ambush and MDFC Land, which we can utilize as a land if we need to, or we can just utilize it to have target creature we control fight target creature we don't control. So yeah, a great additional option in one of our land slots. And speaking of great additional options, we've got cards like Frontier Siege, Choose Your Weapon, and Nevinyrral's Disc. Frontier Siege says, as it enters the battlefield, choose Khans or Dragons. By choosing Khans at the beginning of each of your main phases, add green to your mana pool. So if we choose this mode, well, we can get a ton of mana throughout the game. Again, that's basically 4 mana each turn. But we can also utilize it for its dragon side, which says whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. So again, if we get this out right before our commander, and then we get our commander into play, well, we can have it fight a creature we don't control because obviously our commander has flying. So again, that can be a great way to take a creature out and our commander out as well. And of course, keep in mind that when Marit Lage comes into play with this and play with dragon selected, we can take out a creature as well. Next up, how about Choose Your Weapon, an instant for 2 and a green that is incredible in this deck. It says, choose 1, double target creature's power toughness until end of turn, or this spell deals 5 damage to our creature with flying. So again, this can be yet another way to actually take out our commander with that second option if we need to. But if we've already gotten our land combo off and Marit Lage is in play, this turns it into a 40/40, doubling up its power and toughness. And of course, in a lot of scenarios, that is a one-shot KO. And of course, another fantastic option is just simply using Nevinyrral's Disc. It's an artifact that enters the battlefield tapped. By paying 1, we can tap and destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So this can wipe the board, which of course is great if we want to take out our commander and our commander's in play. Or, if we've already got Marit Lage in play, we can wipe the board. Marit Lage has indestructible, so it stays in play, and all of our opponent's things are gone. Next up, we also have some sacrifice outlets that can help us out too, with Culling Deus and Evolutionary Leap. Culling Deus is an artifact for 2 that has tap, sacrifice a creature, put a charge counter on Culling Deus. And by paying 1, we can sacrifice it to draw a card for each charge counter on it. So by getting this out early, this can be a nice free way to sacrifice our commander when we need to. And then Evolutionary Leap is an enchantment for 1 and a green that has pay green, sacrifice a creature, reveal cards on the top of your library to reveal a creature card. Put that card in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is not a free sacrifice outlet, but it's very cheap. For just 1 mana, we can sacrifice our commander and get a creature into our hand from our library. And actually, there are some creatures in this deck that can be really helpful when we hit them with this. And speaking of helpful, let's talk about some other ways to get rid of our commander with things like Momentous Fall and Primal Growth. Momentous Fall says, as your total cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature, you draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power, then you gain life equal to its toughness. So for 4 mana at instant speed with our commander, this is, hey, draw 4 cards, gain 4 life, and you know what, also get that death trigger that you really want. And keep in mind, again, there are ways for us to actually get our Marit Lage token out if it's going to be dealt with. So if it is going to be dealt with and we've got this in our hand, we can, cast this for 4 mana, draw 20 cards, and gain 20 life. But finally, another card that can help us out, though, is Primal Growth. And as kicker, sacrifice a creature, search your library for a basic land card, put that card on the battlefield, then shuffle your library, and if it was kicked, we get 2 lands instead. So we can either just use this as a regular ramp spell to get just 1 land, or again, if we've got our commander in play, we need to get rid of it, well, just sacrifice it and get 2. But speaking of lands, after we actually get Kura's trigger and get the right lands into our hand, we can get those lands into play very quickly with cards like Enter the Unknown, Swell of Growth, and Broken Bond. Again, this is a 2-land combo, so normally it would take 2 turns to actually get the lands into play, but by letting us play an additional land, we can get both into play on the same turn. Enter the Unknown says target creature you control explores, and you may play an additional land this turn. So for this one, we do need a creature in play to actually get that benefit, but yeah, for just 1 mana, that can really help us out. And then Swell of Growth says target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So for this one, we just need any creature in play, and that could be one of our opponent's creatures. It doesn't matter. We just need to pump something to be able to get an extra land into play. And speaking of our opponent's things, they can also help us out with something like Broken Bond. It says destroy target artifact or enchantment, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So again, this can take something out and also help us get another land into play. Next up, a new card from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty can help us out as well with Azusa's Many Journeys. It's a saga, and its first lore counter says you may play initial land this turn, its second is you gain 3 life, and its third one exiles it and comes back into play transformed. Again, that first one is what we really care about, but yeah, extra value is nice. And speaking of extra value, on the backside we've got Likeness of the Seeker. It's an enchantment creature human monk that's a 3/3, and when it becomes blocked, we untap the 3 lands we control. So that can help us out in certain scenarios. But of course, we also have other ways to get extra lands into play, like Explore, Scale the Heights, and Journey of Discovery. Explorer is going to let us play initial land this turn, and it's going to draw us a card. Scale the Heights says put a +1 counter up to 1 target creature, you gain 2 life, you can play initial land this turn, and draw a card. And Journey of Discovery says choose 1, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle your library, or you may play up to 2 additional lands this turn. So yeah, this one can really help us speed things up and help us out in a lot of different situations. Speaking of which, we also have Druid class, Rites of Flourishing, and Gurpur Orrery. Druid class says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life, and its level 2 says you may play initial land on each of your turns. So yeah, getting this one to level 2 is definitely fantastic in this kind of a deck. A card that does not need leveling at all, though, that can help us out in various ways is Rites of Flourishing. It says at the beginning of each player's draw set, that player draws an initial card. Each player may play an initial land on each of their turns. So this does help everyone out, but it can really help us out with this kind of a deck. Speaking of which, there's Gurpur Orrery, which says each player may play an initial land on each of their turns. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, that player draws 3 cards. So again, somewhat similar to Rites of Flourishing, but again, the main part that is important with this is that they let us play initial land, which is huge once we're set up. So we're also going to be running Court of Bounty, which is an enchantment for 2 green. When it enters the battlefield, we become the Monarch, and at the beginning of our upkeep, we may put a land card from our hand onto the battlefield. If we're the Monarch instead, we can put a creature or land card from our hand onto the battlefield. So yeah, getting the Monarch into play can be great for this kind of a deck where, well, we've got a giant heavy hitting evasive creature, so yeah, we can get through on a lot of opponents. So some nice extra card advantage is nice, and yeah, again, another upkeep, we can get an extra land into play, which is huge. But we've also got some creatures that can help us do that with things like Skyshroud Ranger, Llanowar Scout, and Scaled Herbalist. Each of these can tap to put a land card from our hand onto the battlefield. So yeah, if we're set up properly, it can actually be pretty easy for us to actually sacrifice our commander and get both lands into play and get Marit Lage out all in the same turn. And 2 more creatures that can really help us do this are cards like Arboreal Grazer and Krosan Wayfarer. Arboreal Grazer is a 0/3 with reach that has, when it enters the battlefield, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. And Krosan Wayfarer is a 1/1 that we can sacrifice to get a land from our hand into play. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to really speed things up with this deck if you're set up properly. And speaking of speeding things up, we can also speed up how quickly we can take out our opponents with Marit Lage with things like Fire Shrieker, Grappling Hook, and Inquisitor's Flail. Fire Shrieker says equipped creature has double strike, so yeah, giving our 20/20 flying indestructible Marit Lage double strike can be game ending. If it gets through on an opponent, even if they've got their, starting life till at 40, they are gone. Grappling Hook is very similar. It says equipped creature has double strike, and whenever equipped creature attacks, you may have target creature block at this turn of Fable. So yeah, if we really want to take out a specific creature, we can, but again, that double strike is the important part, and if we get through on an opponent, they're probably getting taken out. And then Inquisitor's Flail can also help us out. It says if equipped creature would deal combat damage, it deals double that damage instead. If another creature would deal damage to equipped creature, it deals double that damage to equipped creature instead. Marit Lage really doesn't care if creatures deal damage to it because again, it's indestructible, but dishing out double damage is huge. And just keep in mind that this is obviously different than Double Strike, so yeah, keep in mind the fun combo between Inquisitor's Flail and say Fire Shrieker, both on Marit Lage, to have Marit Lage dish out 80 damage. Yeah, that's going to be an easy one-shot KO the vast majority of the time. Moving on, we also have some other equipment that can really help us out with things like Haunted Cloak, Mirror Shield, and Mask of Abyssin. Haunted Cloak says equipped creature has Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, each of which are incredible with Marit Lage. So we can keep Marit Lage back for blocking, we can get damage through with Marit Lage, even if our opponent's creatures have Flying, we're going to be able to trample over them, and Haste, yeah, we can swing right away. Next up, how about Mirror Shield, which says equipped creature gets +0/+2 and has Hexproof. And on top of that, whenever a creature with Death Touch blocks or becomes blocked by this creature, destroy that creature. That's not really all that important. But yeah, giving Marit Lage Hexproof and make it incredibly hard to deal with. So we're also going to be running Mask of Abyssin, which says equipped creature gets +1/+2 and has Hexproof. Now, keep in mind there also might be some scenarios where you also want to equip these to Kura if, say, your opponents maybe have some exile spells and you don't want your commander exiled, obviously, because then you don't get the death trigger, so you might want to give it Hexproof. Though, keep in mind it also raises the power and toughness, so yeah, keep that in mind. But yeah, for the most part, these cards are in here for Marit Lage. But another card that can help you out in a lot of situations is Tamiyo's Safekeeping. This is a fantastic new card from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, an instant for just a green that says target permanent you control gains Hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, you gain 2 life. So yeah, for 1 mana, basically protect any of your things. Whether that's your commander from an exile spell, or yeah, Marit Lage from, an exile or bounce spell, this can come in huge. And again, even if Marit Lage gets dealt with, we've got ways to get it back. Or should I say, get the lands back to be able to get it back. So first up, let's talk about cards like Splendid Reclamation, Scare Tiller, and Blessed Respite. Splendid Reclamation is a sorcery for 3 and a green that says return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So yeah, let's say that we've got Marit Lage in play. Well, this can then say, well, okay, we've got Dark Depths and Thespian Sage in our graveyard. Let's just get those back out. Because yeah, even if your opponents deal with that first Marit Lage token, you can then just make another one. Next up, Scare Tiller helps us out in multiple ways. It's a 1/4 Scarecrow, and when it becomes tapped, we choose 1. We can put a land card from our hand on the battlefield tapped, or return target land card from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So first up, yeah, this can be a way to get initial land from our hand into play. Simply by attacking with this, we can get, our second piece of the combo into play on the same turn. Or if our combo piece lands are in our graveyard, well, we can at least get one of them back out per turn with this. Next up though, a different direction that we can go is with something like Blessed Respite. It says target player shuffles their graveyard into their library, prevent all combat damage to be dealt this turn. So obviously, being a fog, this can prevent all combat damage, which is nice and can help us out in a lot of scenarios, but yeah, if we've got our lands in our graveyard that, Dark Depths and Thespian Stage, we can shuffle them back into our library so our commander can get them again. Speaking of which, we're also going to be running Gaia's Blessing, which is a sorcery that says target player shovels up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into their library, draw a card. So again, if we want to target our things, we can do that, or, this might help us out against, a graveyard or reanimator kind of deck. We can also utilize a card like Regrowth to get target card from our graveyard back to our hand. Obviously, this is a very flexible card that can help us out in a lot of situations, but yeah, if we need to get one of our lands back from our graveyard, we can. And of course, then we've got basically Regrowth with Flashback with Dryad's Revival. It does the exact same thing, but for 1 mana more, but we can also flash it back for 4 and a green. So yeah, overall, this can get us 2 things back. Speaking of which, we're also going to be running Once in Future, Healing Technique, and Wildest Dreams. If we spend 3 green mana to cast a spell, which we are going to, this is going to get us 2 cards from our graveyard back to our hand. So again, this can help us out with a lot of things, but if we've got both those lands in our graveyard and we want them back, we can get them back. Speaking of which, there's Healing Technique, which has Demonstrate, which when we cast this spell, we can copy it. If we do, an opponent gets to copy it too. But yeah, this can help us get 2 things back from our graveyard, and we gain life equal to the card's mana value. If we are picking those lands, we don't get any life, but again, that's not the important part. Getting back Marit Lage essentially is very important, so yeah, this can really help us out. Speaking of which, Wildest Dreams costs XX and a green and says return X target cards from your graveyard to your hand, exile Wildest Dreams. So we can dump a lot of mana into this to get a lot of things back, and yeah, at the end of the day, getting our lands back can be huge. But on top of getting card advantage from getting things back from our graveyard, we're also going to be running some actual card advantage spells with things like Harmonize, Colossal Majesty, and Seer Sundial. Harmonize is going to have us draw 3 cards. Colossal Majesty says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. So with this one, obviously our commander meets that requirement, and yeah, Marit Lage very much meets that requirement as well. So it can definitely be a good source of consistent card draw with this deck. Speaking of which, Seer Sundial says, landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2 if you do draw a card. Again, as I've already gone through, we've got plenty of ways to get extra lands into play with this deck, so yeah, you can really take advantage of all those lands coming into play with this. But we can also take advantage of a different kind of thing with Garruk Primal Hunter and Rishkar's expertise. Now, Garruk can do a lot of things, but the most important thing is that it has -3 draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. So with our commander in play, this can be, basically a 5 mana draw 4 card spell, which can be very impactful, but even more impactful can be when we have Marit Lage in play. Because then at that point, this is a 5 mana draw 20 cards spell. Which, yeah, can be really fun. And speaking of fun, there's Rishkar's Expertise. It's a sorcery that says, draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. On top of that, you may cast a spell with mana value 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So yeah, again, with Marit Lage in play, this is draw 20 cards, and then yeah, cast something from your hand for free. Have fun. And of course, with Marit Lage's power, we can also take advantage of cards like Hunter's Insight and Hunter's Prowess. Again, Marit Lage has some evasion with that flying, so usually can get through on at least one opponent, and when it does, well, 3 mana instant speed, draw 20 cards. Yeah, sign me up for that. Speaking of which, the sorcery Hunter's Prowess can also help out too. It says, until end of turn, target creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample, and whenever this creature deals combat to a player, draw that many cards. So this can pump Marit Lage, get a ton of damage through, and yeah, draw us a lot of cards. Also, obviously, keep in mind that our commander does have evasion as well with flying, so if we need to draw some cards earlier with these, we can. And one last thing to keep in mind, I'll just highlight a couple of other lands in this deck that you might want to keep in mind for actually tutoring, because again, Kura actually tutors, up 3 cards, not just 2. High Market is definitely one that you might want to consider. It's a land that can tap for a color, so it has tap, sacrifice a creature, you gain 1 life. So obviously this is most impactful when we actually get it before we get our commander out, because, well, if we can get this out, we can just tap the sacrifice our commander whenever we want to. But even if we are utilizing our commander's tutor effect to actually go get this, it can still be impactful. Again, if we need to shuffle our 2-land combo back into our deck to get it back, well, we can utilize then this land to sacrifice our commander for free the next time it comes down to get those lands again. And another option, and thanks Eddie for pointing these out, that might come in really handy are the Urza lands. So cards like Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, and Urza's Tower can be very spicy in this deck. Essentially, they each tap for 1, but when you've got all 3 in play, they basically tap for 7 in total. And obviously, since Kura can search for 3 lands, well, you can just tutor up all 3 of these if you really want to. So if you happen to have Dark Depths and Thespian Stage already in your hand, or you've got another way to tutor for one of those and you've got one in your hand, or whatnot, or you just really want a lot of mana out of your lands, go get these. But now that we've gone through every single non-land card in this deck, and we also talked about some of the important lands, well, let's jump into the price. Again, like I mentioned before, every single card in this deck outside of Kura, which is around $3, and then also Dark Depths, which is around $16, is less than $1. So outside of the price tag of about $20 or so with those 2 cards, the rest of the deck is incredibly budget friendly at around $31 total, with the total being around $51.65. That being said, if you already have the basic lands for this deck, you can save a good amount as well, because all those basics are being counted at 10 cents a piece. And also, speaking of potential extra savings, if you want to potentially save even more, buy this deck on TCG Player and utilize heavily played and damaged cards, because those cards need a home too. Though do keep in mind that this estimated cost does not include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.